All right, we're now live. Tyler, Chase, appreciate you guys coming on today.
Thanks for having us, man.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I guess if you could give maybe the audience just a brief background, maybe Tyler, you go first, and then Chase, maybe you could follow.
I started off in 2011. I was hired as a minor league video intern with the Cleveland Indians, and one thing just kept leading to another. Went to Mississippi State for 1 year as a graduate assistant and started doing their video and advanced scouting reports, and then from there down to the Dominican Republic. Spent a year working in international operations with the Texas Rangers, and then 3 years at Missouri State University as director of operations, and then from there got hired by the Angels following the 2018 collegiate season, and then 2019 was my first season, and 2020 would have been my second season with the Angels, where I would have been in the AZL rookie league for second year, and that's pretty much it. Now find myself living in Pittsburgh, trying to figure life out.
Chase, how about you?
Yeah, I was a Division III head coach for, I think, 15 years. When I started when I was 23, and kind of slowly built a travel organization also, where we would do some lessons and different stuff like that throughout the winters. And then last year took a job with the Tigers, was going to be a minor league hitting coach, and then COVID hit, and here we are today.
Yeah, Tyler, I know I've followed you for a while, and I know you're a co-founder of Slugfest, and I went to the first year at Missouri State, which I thought was fantastic. Last year I had a Orioles thing, I believe, and I couldn't make it, but you did a really good job with that one. And then Chase, I recently kind of came across you just because of Tyler tweeting out, that a very detailed player plan. And actually I didn't even originally see it. One of my buddies texted it to me. And so I wanted to reach out just to see like what have you guys been up to, just because you see a lot of the same stuff in baseball and in player development sometimes. And that's not always a bad thing, right, if it works. But for guys who really take the time and have give players just the chance to develop from just a holistic point of view, I think is something that's missing in it. And that's why, again, I wanted to just talk to you guys and see what you guys were up to. So Tyler, you said you just moved to Pittsburgh. Like what's going on? I know you're a Cleveland guy, so I mean, hopefully you haven't changed to a Steelers fan now, but what do you guys been up to?
Well, I mean, it kind of started off as the shutdown happened, and Chase originally was DMing me on Twitter about Slugfest videos and blowing me up, dude, when are they going to be ready? When are they going to be ready? And I mean, that was a long process, and so then the shutdown happened, and we were just kind of going back and forth, and it was like, hey, Pittsburgh's not that far, a little over 2 hours. And so he had a bunch of guys working out on the down low. I don't know how down low it was, or some of the prohibition baseball style stuff in a way, but he said, so I came over and hung out for a day, and we just kind of hit it off, and we were going back and forth. And my mom, I'm from Cleveland, grew up in Cleveland, called Cleveland home my whole life, but I mean, my mom was my only family there, and she got a new job moving to Philadelphia, and so then was furloughed on June 1st and trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do moving forward? And the idea of getting into a facility and being more involved in the private sector is something that had been in my mind for a while. I think just the instability of being a professional coach in general requires that. And then it's also a really, really good development opportunity. I mean, I haven't been coaching as long as Chase, so he's got a lot of experience and things I can learn from him. And so I was really looking for okay, what am I going to do? I could literally do anything I want right now. I could go anywhere in the country. Like home is no longer really even home. And it just became, we're going back and forth, and Chase is like, dude, I got all the tech. Got KVest, we got Blast, we have Rapsodo. How could we use this better? And like, I think that's one of the things, it's the challenge of, okay, how do we put this together? I mean, you see so many things that are legitimately just the same thing over and over, over and over. And it's like, there's shepherd and there's sheep. And like, okay, like if I actually want to advance and I want to like continue to contribute to the game, it's like, you can't just be a sheep. You have to be a shepherd to a degree. I mean, like even starting Slugfest, like that started off as some text messages, and it was like, let's just do it. Like I had no clue what I was doing. I mean, you showed up to the first one, you didn't know that. Like I was literally at not radio, Guitar Center, Guitar City in Springfield, saying, hey, like how do I connect this type of microphone to this type of speaker? And I'm like, and then I still didn't really get it. So then I had to like go back with the speaker and the cables and like, I mean, like it was just figuring out and learning it. And that's what this process has been. And it, like, I think one of the unique things is like when I was at Missouri State, I had the opportunity to coach some summer ball, and it just turned into like systems have always fascinated me. Like every time I've gone to ABCA, every time any type of professional learning thing is I'm looking for like what's kind of their system. Why does it work for them with where they're at, with their challenges, with their constraints, and it's like a good system is going to scale to anywhere in the country. It doesn't matter if I'm the hitting coach at the University of Arkansas, Mississippi State, LSU, or I'm the hitting coach at La Roche University or Valparaiso or some of the schools that don't have as big a budgets. It's like, okay, well, my philosophy needs to be dynamic enough to work anywhere I go and that's going to evolve with the player type as well. Like, because ultimately as a hitting coach, like I think one of the things that we see too much of on social media is we're arguing swing mechanics and what metrics matter and all that. And it goes, no, like a hitting coach should be an offensive coordinator. Like, how can we make you the most valuable run producer for your team possible? And that's kind of like in Chase, in our conversations, it became clear, like that's how he thinks of hitting. And that's where the conversation started, and it's evolved into today.
I think from my standpoint, it was, seeing these player plans come back to the private sector, for 10, 15 years with different minor league guys. A lot of them wouldn't necessarily use them or even look at them or be engaged with them very much. So, we're kind of a good team because as much as he is about having a system and organized, I'm probably the complete opposite of that and consider myself kind of a chameleon with things and really try to be a player first type of coach. And, seeing these things again, coming back, like there's always like the organizational bias that's in there or the hitting coach bias that's in there. And there's not a whole lot of the player opinion in them, and not a whole lot of getting to know the player, his past, from anything to what he works on in the past, what he was taught in the past, how he used to swing, injuries, just finer details of, essentially that make up this hitter, trying to tie that all together with a system that was, still able to be flexible to aid, in these guys' off-season work and kind of remove, our personal biases as to what we believe as hitting coaches.
Yeah, I think the like building off that, like the player-centric part, it becomes like when you start with the player, like what do they value? How do they think? Because if a player doesn't think it's important, it's not important. If a guy comes in and says, I need to increase my bat speed to increase my exit velocity because I don't have, like, okay, there's way more to hitting than those things. There's way more to being a productive offensive piece than those two things. But at the end of the day, we need to be like, we're going to have to tie everything back into those things because they value those things. They're coming in. We could sit here and say, hey, like, we're going to talk about posture and being able to move efficiently and being in positions that are just going to make you more efficient. Like, in their mind, like, they're there to add bat speed. That's what is the motivation behind their work. And they're adding bat speed to add exit velo. And so when, like, within a system, like, it becomes almost an education system for the player and us as coaches, where we can then go, okay, hey, like, this is how this relates to what you value. So this is the angle we can take to start guiding you to where you need to be,
or where you want to be,
or where you need to be, where you want to be, through what you find important.
That's good. I love what both of you said there. And just hearing both of you talk, you guys are going to make a really good team, just because, Chase, like you said, you've been coaching for a long time, had a lot of experience. Tyler, you have all the tools and the knowledge, and you're up to date on everything that's going on player development wise in baseball. So take me through a little, through how would this work? And I know this is really new. Before we start recording, I mean, you guys don't even have technically a name for this business yet, but what, like I show up to the facility, and then is it just me and you, Tyler, going through like a plan together, or like how does it work?
I think, this is evolving. Like, this is literally evolving as we go about it. And that's one of the fun parts of this. Like, honestly, I'm having a blast. Like, it's a ton of fun just with how many twists and turns it's taken. But I think to start, it goes, okay, like, if you're a player, you just want to get a basic hitting assessment and player plan. Okay, you come into the facility and we're going to hit. And I think the structure of that is like, okay, like, how we need to make this as game-like as possible, because like we shouldn't be factoring in what you do on flips off the tee. Like, it needs to be as game-like as possible, whether, it's machine breaking balls, fastballs, even short BP mixed, like exactly how it's going to look at, like, that's going to continue to evolve. And I think but it's always going to be with the idea of everything's going to be going back to how do we get to the most game-like, essentially, assessment environment as possible. But, and then just hitting swing marks to reach stabilization and metrics. Like, okay, the batted ball data, the blast data, the K-vest. Okay, like, how can we get a nice sample, but also like understand that, I could just have slept wrong, and like, that's my back stiff, and my ability to rotate and, dissociate my pelvis and my torso might not be. So it's like the day-to-day aspect, but it's come in. Like, if you're a hitter, it's come in. We're gonna have you hit. Like, just be you. Tell us what you want to do. Like, let's go through like what you do in the cage to prepare to hit, and then, like, let's hit. We'll collect the data, and then it's break that data down. And it starts with a player questionnaire. Before you even come in, it's essentially a get to know you questionnaire. We send you a link with a survey, and you fill it out. And I think that's one of the biggest parts, is that's giving us a snapshot into who you are as a player. And then the other part is, like, if you're going to be training at the facility, that's real easy. But like, players who come in from potentially out of town, or players training remotely, like, understanding what equipment they have available and what are their facilities like. Like, I mean, I think one of the biggest things in the back of my mind is this summer I coached an inner city team in Cleveland. And I mean, we were practicing, all the turf complexes in Cleveland were closed. So we were practicing on the city park that was weed infested. It was concrete. And there were no bases. We just had to do drop down bases. Home plate, there was only half of it. So we dropped down another half to home plate, essentially. And we had no cage. And as a hitting coach, it was like, okay, we have all these hitters. How are we going to get their work in? And we started to get creative with PVC pipes, med balls, chuck it, line drive pro, wiffle balls. But then the other portion of that was, okay, like that's practice, but how can these guys practice on their own? And it was like, most of them don't have access to cages consistently. So then it became, okay, well, what do you have access to? And that's where the idea of, we can give players incredible plans that they can come in and do in the facility, but they may not have that for the other days of the year when they're not in that facility or like with their team. Like, if you're a college player and you're from middle of nowhere, Ohio, like you're at home for Christmas break, your options for training are going to be more limited. So how can we build the training to what is actually achievable for you on a consistent basis from a training standpoint? Because if you can't do it consistently, then what's really the point? If you can only come in once a week, or, that'd be on a good end for a lot of people. But if you're relying on just the team practice or just that once a month when you go to a facility or any of that, I think that's a huge thing, because like the disparity between who has access to these facilities and who has the resources, like that's one of the things impacting the game right now is like, okay, if you don't have the funds to be in a facility multiple times a week as a youth player or a high school player, if you're from a northern area, like, okay, that's a limiting factor for your development. So I think the biggest thing is understanding how players think, but then two, us getting a snapshot of, okay, how can they train at home outside of the facility? Because that's where a lot of development is going to happen.
Yeah, and to kind of go off of what he said, with the player questionnaire, like we're really trying to get into, what this player is thinking, his mental state when he's going good, mental state when he's going bad, kind of his overall approach. I mean, we have to tie these things into their development plan, because we can look at tech and data and obviously he's probably a little bit more versed in that stuff than I am. And not that I don't hold value to it, but a lot of that stuff can be skewed based on some of the things that is in a player's approach, and kind of where his mental mind state is. And then also kind of to begin this process, which we know is not going to happen for everybody, but some of the players that we've already kind of talked to, they have the ability to get their TrackMan data, or they have a ton of game film, and so we're not just going to base these assessments off of practice. I mean, I think that's kind of will tie us kind of into the facility that we're opening also. But we need to, a lot of the training technology is all done in the practice setting. And then we start building, movement plans and player profiles off of that. And so, getting the game film and the game data and being able to use whatever statistical information that we have to kind of, aid in this process, again, with the player's goals in mind.
So Chase, like how is this facility that you guys are opening up different than the typical lesson model facility?
Yeah, I mean, just like most coaches, I mean, I think anybody in our age demographic has spent a significant amount of time in an indoor facility, especially if you live in the North. And, being an owner of a travel ball organization for so long and a college coach, like, seeing how, the culture is that, it's almost like everybody's looking for that magic pill in this industry where they think they can go, take a lesson and they're fixed, or they have a bad game, go get a lesson and it's fixed. And honestly, like there's really not a whole lot of one, like, a doctor has an education and a degree and a certification to be able to be a doctor. And in the lesson setting, it could be anybody. I mean, if you open up a facility and purchase tech, and people come to give lessons, and because people think that there is a one size fits all training module out there, that this is what you do, and this is what your philosophy, and this is going to work. And the reality of it is, it's like you have to be a chameleon in that setting, where you have to be able to help guys in different ways and different swings. And so going kind of onto that, it kind of led to the standard coach gripe, like players don't know how to play their game anymore. When your team's losing, these guys don't have any instincts, and you've heard it a million times, I'm sure, in your career too. So kind of tying those two things together, like what are we really doing in this indoor setting, and kind of, I guess, going against the grain is kind of my MO. And we from talking to big league coaches that are losing, or college coaches, high school coaches that are having tough seasons, that seems to be a common gripe. Like, these guys don't have instincts, they don't know how to situationally hit, whatever it is. Like, the purpose of the training is almost become to be better at training the next time you're in there, and not to what this does in the game and how does it transfer to the game. So really the whole model for the Battleground Baseball Group was to create a training environment that has transfer to it. I think I've being a Division III coach at a very small school. When I started, we had no choice but to develop players. So that's just was our MO, and recruiting was it was tough. So you had to develop players, and with that, like the experience and having to do that with a multitude of different caliber of player, it kind of leads to the point of, like, does this stuff really work, and how can we make it better so that it transfers to the game, which is the ultimate goal. The goal isn't to have higher EVs and bat speed in the training setting. The goal is to get more hits and be productive for your team. And so, being able to tie, the mental, physical, and all those components into the lesson format is what our goal is.
And I think, like, from my perspective too, I've never truly worked in a facility setting. From the start of my career, I've been in the team setting. Last winter, I went home to Cleveland for about 6 weeks to give some lessons and spend time with my mom. And I started giving the lessons, and my thought process became like, man, I don't want to keep doing this to make extra money. Like, lessons, and I was, in a lot of ways, I was a bad salesman as a private hitting coach giving lessons, because it'd be like, yeah, well, I want little Johnny to hit 5 times a week with you, one-on-one. I'm like, we're not going to change that much 5 every day. Like, most of those days should be, hey, let's come in, let's do your routine, and then, like, I'm going to throw you mixed BP, and I'm going to try to strike you out, and we're going to talk through at bats, and we're going to talk through situations, because you haven't played a game in 5 months. Like, why are we changing something when it's not even based off of any sort of game results? And I think, even so through the evolution of this, and like even going back to the player plan stuff, like, it started off as like, how can we just make Battleground like a unique training experience? And like, I think I kind of work as a hitting coach. I like to work, I work through kind of like a checklist of methodical thinking, where it goes, okay, what is the production goal? As a coach, what is my production goal for the player? What's the player's production goal? Like, and that could get very complicated when you start getting into like all the different metrics and all that, even like OPS, about how do you have a high OPS? Is it from your slugging, or is it from your on base percentage, or is it a blend? But so you start with like, okay, what is the player what do you want the player to do as a coach? And then what's the player want to do? So how do we tie those two in together? And then from there it becomes, okay, like, do they have the capability to move in efficient manners? Like, that's a movement screening. And then do they have the capacity? Okay, that's strength conditioning. And then if the answer to both of those is yes, then it's okay. That's a swing and mental. It's a technique and mental skills aspect that we can incorporate. And that's where, like, the player plan and how can we be as holistic as possible was something that, like, first from the facility setting and even being in the team setting, it's like all these guys, like, they come in and you see their data and like, oh, this guy should be a great player. Like, they're exit veloing the ball 95, and it's like, then they get in the game and there's just zero feel for, like, hey, there's runners on second and third, nobody out early in the game, 0-0, pitcher goes 0-0, slider below the zone, guy chases slider in the dirt. Okay, so now he's 0-1. Okay, what do you think? Like, what do you think that pitcher's going to do again? Like, they don't want to throw a strike. They don't want you to put the ball in play. Like, the goal is to keep runs off the scoreboard. As a pitcher, as a hitter, your goal is to help your team score more runs than the other team. So, okay, we're 0-1. Okay, pitcher goes slider in the dirt again, saying, hey, like, you just swung, like, you spun yourself into the ground on that first one. Okay, so I'm going to throw that again. Boom. Hitter goes, chases it again. Slider in the dirt. Okay, now we're 0-2. It's like, what do you think they're going to throw 0-2? Probably the same pitch until you show, like, I'm not going to spin myself into the ground. And it's like, in the team setting, just how many times it's happening over and over and over, because players are chasing exit velos, metrics, and the entire, like, evolution of it. Like, how are we connecting it back to the game? How are we connecting it back to scoring more runs?
And kind of go off of that, the adjustments are always mechanical to these guys. They got mom and dad or brother, sister in the stands, and everybody has an iPhone, and everybody's recording, swings from the open view and analyzing, their movements and where their hands are and their foot, and, when they analyzing the swing mechanics. So the kids become, players that every time they chase two sliders in the dirt, they start to, especially the younger, minor league guys or the college player, like, everybody goes back to, what did I do there with my swing? It was always mechanical adjustments. And, the reality of it is it probably ties into more of those other things. And that stuff needs to be trained in the lesson environment, because that's what makes players valuable and winners. The key, in my opinion, very similar to the way that the pro game is right now with the influx of technology and data and, guys like all of us that didn't play, in the big leagues, being hitting coaches or pitching coaches, and guys who can, relay all the data and technology. Like, somewhere in the middle there is the coach. And the ability to coach, the ability to communicate to the player. And that comes from, past coaching experiences, past playing experiences, being able to use all the tech. Like, that hybrid coach is super important, and being able to tie that all into the being, applicable to the game, is the key. So I think that transformation in pro ball and in college baseball is going to need to trickle down into the lesson format, because people are paying a lot of money for these lessons. They're training in predictable, easy, feel good environments constantly, and the game is everything opposite of that. So that's kind of where we're trying to take this Battleground Baseball Group facility to do.
Is the new facility open yet?
In about a week.
In about a week.
Yep.
So is it, like, how many coaches will be doing stuff like coaching out of there?
Yeah, I mean, we have about 9 staff members, various guys that are, college coaches in the area, or Mostly staff members that have coaching experience. And that's what we want to make a point to, is that we're not trying to, just hire the ex-player fresh out of college or fresh out of pro ball and come do some lessons and fund the facility. And, we want to make this almost like the environment, and hence why we went with the group in the title, was we want this to be an environment where it's almost like a think tank, and guys are growing and trying new things, and we're exploring different, not only movement solutions but training solutions that hopefully over the course of time we can see this stuff work and transfer to the game. So the culture there, obviously we want it to be competitive, but we also want it to be growth minded.
I think.
So go ahead, Tyler.
No, I was going to say, like, I think in being in the team setting my whole life, like, Chase mentioned like the think tank idea, and that's what stood out to me about hanging out with these guys coming over a couple of times over the summer before taking the plunge and moving here, was like the think tank environment, and how you push each other, and like it's all player first, like, and in the team environment, I think like we see that, especially in professional baseball. Look at how many hitting coaches any individual player can have throughout even one season, let alone their evolution from drafted or signed as an international free agent to the big leagues. And then even the rate big league hitting coaches, they spend 5 years in the big leagues, how many hitting coaches are they going to go through just at the big league level alone? And it goes, okay, like you have this think tank environment, it's a collaboration, and like that should always be the goal, because the collaboration is giving all these different perspectives to put the player first. But how do we all get on the same page? Like, how can we be sure that we're all consistently giving the player the same message? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And like, even going back to the player plan, like, well, that's why, like, that's originally what we were talking about with the facility for, was like, okay, like we have this think tank environment, we have all these different staff members. How can we just keep everyone on the same page? How can we keep mom and dad on the same page, so that no matter what environment they're in, at home, with their high school team, with their summer team, I mean, I think it can get very confusing for a player very quickly. And like, especially for like players who they want to be good, so they listen to
everybody.
They listen to everybody because they trust that, hey, like you have experience, and it's like, okay, like more of a group. How do you get this collaboration? And I think that's the think tank environment is super, super exciting, and like it's so different from most facilities to me. Like in my just outside observation of it, even going back to like growing up in Cleveland, going to facilities and all that, it's like, man, like the group think tank is, I think that's one of the most exciting parts.
Yeah, and keeping that kind of concept going, being able to have, a minor leaguer or even a big leaguer hit next to, a high school kid, or, maybe a popular high school kid in the area hitting next to a 12 or 13-year-old. That environment of just not even just removing the coach from that setting and allowing these guys to pick each other's brains. And I mean, for me, like that probably is where I obtain the most knowledge, is from, just talking to other players and creating that atmosphere where everybody's there to help each other, knowing that, the egos are out the door. Like we're not, it's not my way or the highway. It's not, Tyler's or a pitching coach that we might have in there. It's everybody's all for that individual player getting better and being successful in their careers.
So is the goal to have that cohesive group, right, where like Tyler works for the player, and then like Chase, like you collaborate with Tyler on like what to do with the player? Like how would it work so like everyone's on the same page?
Yeah, I mean, we're all going to be in there, and the key is kind of, we're not like honing in on an individual player. We plan to, do a little bit more of a group style of training. And each coach on that day's, for that day is going to have different assignments, whether they're doing the warm ups or the movement preps or, whatever we might be focused on that day, but we're also all kind of collaborating around, and, it's very much more of like a team atmosphere, being behind the turtle, at practice type of atmosphere, as opposed to, like you're going to listen to Tyler today, or you're going to listen to Chase today, or, whatever that might be.
So it's going to be a group format, like for players would just sign up via group and then they'd come in at a specific time.
Yeah. We want to try to make this affordable for the player. I mean, from an organizational standpoint, like we're not going to, you only get good players if you're doing good work. And with that, they need to be able to come in more often. They need more, accessibility to, the staff and the facility and other players that are good. So, being able to design the business model around, the emphasis is on getting players in there more, and more, over the long off season, 3-4 times a week, is the goal.
How big is the facility?
5,000 square feet.
Okay. So pretty big, big.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. How many, like what's the setup of cages, and there's mounds and stuff, I assume, in there too?
Yeah, we have, six cages. Some of them are bigger than other, but the entire place is a shell also. So, we're able to, go live and do all the stuff in a large space.
Where would the Spikes at your summer ball team, where would they practice in the off season before you had a facility?
We never really had one. We would only practice 5 times in the winter because most of the guys would go back to high school. We never had youth teams. It was only a high school program at the time. So we would just, rent college gyms, rent different turf bubbles and just random places like that. But we only would do 5, and then put most of the emphasis on the in-season practices. We would practice, 6 hours a week during the season, before, Tuesday, Wednesdays, before the tournament weekends. But what we see is like to be able to, as like make adjustments, with a way a player is moving or thinking, and then have to have results in 2 days. That process is kind of messed up. So, adding the facility to, be able to have the travel teams practice in there will be, a huge bonus for our people also. That's
good. I love it. Yeah, I think it's great. I think, like I said, I was talking to somebody the other day. I like people who think outside the box a little bit. And I think the player plans are going to be a huge benefit. I'll make sure to put the link to that Tyler tweeted out in the show notes, so anyone can check out like what that's going to look like. So if someone wants to get one of these player plans done, or just wants to train at the facility that's going to be opening up next week, what's the best way to go about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're on all social media platforms with our DMs open, so guys can reach out to us. And kind of, like I said, we're at the beginning stages of all this. So, right now, I don't really have a concern about having a large number of people joining. So, we're going to take it slow, and people can message us and get in, whenever they want.
Awesome. Good stuff. Tyler, Chase, appreciate it. We'll make sure to put both your social media accounts so people can find it in the show notes too. But again, thanks again, guys. This is a lot of fun, and I'm glad to see the game is progressing.
Hey, thanks for having us, man.
Thank you for having us. Enjoyed it.
Doing a great job with these podcasts too.
Appreciate it.